Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. Dr. Allen chats with successful investors exploring their journey from setback to triumph. Through this window, we glimpse the truths that inspire our guests to invest abundantly and flourish in all areas of life. And now your host, Dr. Allen.
Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, where we delve deep into the lives of our successful guests to find our own inspiration to thrive and flourish in all areas of life. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. Today's guest co-founded Wealthy Mind Investments to fulfill his lifelong passion for helping people. His focus is on commercial real estate investments because of the simplicity of being a passive investor, the scalability, and the tax benefits. He creates strategic partnerships with experienced multifamily operators who have their boots on the ground in cash flowing and growing markets. He believes that busy professionals deserve access to proven wealth strategies in commercial real estate investing so they can enjoy life to the fullest. My guest is originally from the Ukraine and has lived in Silicon Valley for the last 25 years. I am looking forward to getting to know Alex Kaholadenko, and I probably mispronounced your name there. How do you pronounce your name?
You almost did it right.
Almost.
It is a long last name. So first name is Alex. Actually, the full name is Alexander.
I thought it might be.
Last name is Kolodenko.
Kolodenko. Okay. Well, wonderful to have you on the show here. So let's just start by, I think a good way to get into this, and I do it with most of my guests here, is to go back to your childhood. And if you can share with us a memorable experience, particularly a memorable experience that you can look back on and say, that was really a formative experience in my life.
That's a good question. So growing up in Ukraine, I had a pretty good childhood. I was fortunate and lucky enough to be raised with very loving my father and my mother. I guess the most memorable experience was in a negative, or you could say, it was a turning point of my life, was how quickly life could turn upside down. I lost my mother when I was 13, unfortunately. She has been dealing with heart problems for a long time, and one day, sitting at home watching a football game with my father, I overheard her screaming, and by the time the emergency service was called, she did pass away. So from then on, I realized how quickly we can lose, very fortunate and loving people in our lives. So that was a wake-up call, and it took me a while to get over that. Feeling of losing somebody, such as an important figure in my life, such as my mother. But I have carried that grief in me for a long time, and I think it made me a stronger person and a more caring and loving individual in my life.
Yeah, no doubt that certainly losing a parent is hard on any child, and 13 is certainly a vulnerable age. So that definitely was an impactful time in your life. How did that impact you in a way that helped you to be the person that you are today?
I guess I grew up more independent. My father was working long hours. He was not around me much, and I became an adult earlier in my life than most of the other teenagers. I always had an entrepreneurial spirit in me. Even though now I still have a day job, I always have had sort of entrepreneurial spirit where I would run my own business on the side. So having said that, I think dating back to probably age 14 to 15, I was always doing something in terms of running any sort of business. I was selling books, I was selling other services, I was working with other people and just helping. I just enjoy being around people and having this entrepreneurial spirit that kind of brought the best in me.
What kind of things were you selling?
So not only I was selling books, I was a big sport fan. So I was selling memorabilia, items for to soccer fans as well. And at one point, I was also collecting stamps as well. And I was sharing them, and then I started selling to some of the people that were interested in more collectible items as well. So we had the fan clubs, and then we would meet on Sundays in parks and just exchange different type of goods.
Well, tell us about the Ukraine. I have to plead ignorance here. I don't know a whole lot about Ukraine. I know some of its history in conjunction with the USSR and things like that. And I know it's kind of the breadbasket of that area. But outside of that, I don't really know a whole lot about the Ukraine. So tell us about it.
So Ukraine it still is a pretty large country, over 50 million people. Mm-hmm. And it was part of the former Soviet Union, one of the 16 republics for a very long time. And then at one point in the 90s, it broke away and became an independent country. There is a very close relationship between Russia and Ukraine. Russia still tries to sort of dominate the Ukraine from the politics perspective and from all the relationships that they were developed. There's a lot of people that speak both languages, including myself. I speak Russian and Ukrainian. I grew up there. I've had an amazing childhood. I have a lot of friends that I still interact up to now. And I left Ukraine more than 20 years ago. I lived in the area 25 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And it is a great country. I guess I'm very biased because I grew up there. But at the end of the day, people just want to be happy. They want to have good jobs. They want to enjoy their life. They're very hospitable, and I encourage everyone to visit and see it for themselves, probably post-COVID-19 when we start flying again. The best time to go usually is during the summer. We have 4 seasons, so I do not recommend that you go during the winter because it can be pretty rough. Lots of sightseeing. Again, people are very open. A lot of good restaurants and relatively inexpensive to visit that as well. They have their own currency, and it is very advantageous, especially if you bring U.S. dollars to the country. If you like sightseeing, such as old churches, museums, then there's a lot to see, especially in Kiev. That's the city that I'm from.
So
it's a capital of Ukraine. Yeah. I grew up in Kiev. It's a 3 million, more than 3 million now in population, and it's a typical city that was built in Europe, where the river runs through it. The city is pretty old. It has a lot of history, over 2,000 years old. Some of the buildings they're quite unique as far as the churches concerned. Ukraine was started before Russia. Not a lot of people do know about that, and over time they kind of morphed into the Soviet Union, Russia, and the Soviet Union itself.
Well, interesting. So, I mean, I realize, Kiev is the capital of that, and I realized it was a pretty large city. But I don't know. I just always think of Ukraine as very rural. For the most part, it is it not? Or
yeah, lots of smaller cities as well. Lots of natural resources out there as well. I mean, we are known for coal mines, gas, and we are big producers of bread and some of the other foods as well. and there was some talk in the last 5-10 years that Ukraine tried to get involved from a political perspective and join European nation or even NATO. Mm-hmm. And we've had numerous presidents that brought more democracy, but it's still sort of facing some of the challenges with democracies and being not totally democratic, not totally socialist, and not totally a capitalistic country. So I think the country is still trying to form itself and follow the best practices of some of the countries, but there's definitely a lot of potential there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, an interesting place to have roots in. So tell us about the transition from Ukraine to the United States. And how was that for you?
So I came here 25 years ago with my family and some of my relatives, including my father and my stepmother. And the first few years were pretty rough. I didn't speak English much. So I didn't know the culture either. So I had to go through some adjustment period. It was not easy. But then after a while, I learned the language, I learned the culture, I got some jobs, I got my feet wet in different variety of industries, and I started working in tech. I met my wife, and since then, things started to kind of evolve, and I feel very fortunate and lucky to live in the Bay Area. Now, one of the probably the best places, if not United States, but entire world.
Well, did you have a tech background before coming to the States?
Yes, well, I always had interest for computers in general. I'm always curious. My mind is always curious about latest and greatest technology, so I was always following that even growing up. And then I think eventually it was sort of a natural process. A couple of my friends started to go to technical colleges. There was a big demand in the late 90s in the Silicon Valley for tech professionals. So I ended up also going to school, training myself, and eventually finding my first job at a small startup.
Okay. Well, what are some of the major cultural differences that you have experienced? So I'll give you just a moment to think about that. But today, folks, my guest is Alex Kolodenko, and he is the co-founder of Wealthy Mind Investments, and he has a passion for helping people through creating strategic partnerships in multifamily housing.
The question was the cultural differences between different people from Ukraine
between the Ukraine and the U.S. Yeah,
that's a good question. So in our culture, people at least in the beginning they're very serious. They don't smile a lot. They don't ask a lot of questions as far as how are you doing on how things are without knowing each other. So we can be portrayed, a lot of Ukrainians can be portrayed as more reserved, cold, or maybe unfriendly people. But once you get to know us, there is a different side that you get to meet. So it just takes time to build these relationships. Maybe a little bit longer versus some of the other folks.
Yeah, I think most of the world is much more introverted than the United States. We're probably the most extroverted country that the world has ever seen. So
very true.
Yeah, and that's and being an introvert, that I've always kind of felt like an outsider in my own country here. But that's the way life goes, isn't it?
Very true.
Yes. Well, you have gone into to multifamily investing for the purpose of making life better for other people. So I would take from that that that's one of your higher purposes and one of the things that brings you meaning in life. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. In general, I always been a person that like to share information. I enjoy educating people and just providing value and showing them of different options that are out there that are not possible. Many times when I start to explain things to people that they're able to buy large apartments as low as $50,000 investments with other people as a syndicate, a group investing model, people do not believe me because there is a preconceived notion that you have to have a lot of money. Only rich people are able to buy these large projects.
Mm-hmm.
And when I try to break this down and simplify the process, a lot of people get excited about these opportunities. So in general, a lot of people, including me in the beginning, I felt skeptical, and there was a lack of education and sort of a fear of unknown. What am I getting myself into? It is a big commitment. There is a learning curve involved. But having said that, I took a leap of faith. I went to a lot of trainings. I went to a lot of conferences. I met a lot of successful people from all walks of life that share the passion for financial freedom and sharing this information and resources with others. And I was able to overcome that, test that model on myself. And now I'm at a point of my life where I formed a company together with my business partner, and we are active. We are helping people when we come across a deal that we personally like to invest with our own funds. We offer these opportunities to other friends and family that we know of.
So how do you break that that barrier of the fear of the unknown, as opposed to the great opportunities that are there?
I think there is no magic to that. I think what I do, and it all comes down to one thing, which is being authentic and just educating and sharing your story. And if a person believes in you, has a trust factor, that they think that they relate to you, then they end up working with you and investing with you. On a recent deal that we did, we recently closed 232 units in North Carolina. We reached out to a few selected people in our group that we thought that have an interest, and we brought one of the sponsors for a webinar. About 30 people attended the webinar that expressed interest in our offering, and within a week we were able to fill the investment requirements for that particular offering. Now, I've been in contact with some of these people for weeks and some of them months, educating them, meeting with them, asking them questions about their risk tolerance, about their investment goals, what kind of investment are they looking for. So they felt confident when I reached out to them, presenting that sort of opportunity, that I did my due diligence, I connected with them, I was able to relate to them. And some of them decided to invest with us, some of them didn't. And I said, if the timing was not right for some of the people, that's okay too, because, let's face it, there's a lot of unknown. Some people not feeling confident about tomorrow with this coronavirus still happening, and we still ended up being friends, and there is no harm, no foul. And we're going to continue to do what we do, and when the right opportunity comes along, we'll present another offering. So you cannot be pushy. You cannot force people to do business with you, right? So it's all built upon trust and education. So I position myself as a person that give people options, educate them on potential investment opportunities, and if the deal and timing makes sense for them, then they end up investing and working with us. And if not, then perhaps in the near future.
Good philosophy there. So what in your life brings you your greatest sense of purpose and meaning?
I think it's just what I just been talking about, which is just sharing. Sharing is caring and educating and giving people options so that they can achieve their ultimate goal, which for a lot of people, the reason why they invest in syndication is creating enough passive income and having that freedom that they can do some of the other things that are not able to do right now. Money is not everything. We all know that. I know it's a cliche, it's a phrase, but it gives you a whole lot of options once you do them.
Yes, it's nice.
So I think of myself as a person who is earning and working toward being the trusted advisor and the person that they can reach out to, bounce some ideas, and share some of their investment goals. And when we have the right offering that we vet out with my business partner and I, that people can jump and feel confident that this is a good deal. They should be feeling good about themselves when they invest. So that's the goal. Even when you think about the name of our company, which is Wealthy Mind Investments, we truly believe, our personal belief is that the true wealth begins in your mind. And I would like to associate ourselves and think of ourselves as people that not only wealthy in our on a monetary basis, but also in our mindsets, where we like to help other people along the way in our journey to become more rounded and wealthy in all walks in their lives.
Well, that's wonderful. That's really kind of the point of my whole podcast here, is to help people live, to thrive and flourish abundantly in all areas of their life. So I truly do appreciate that. Today, my guest is Alex Kolodenko. And Alex, if you would tell the folks how they can get hold of you, I just have one more question after that. So go ahead and tell folks how they can get hold of you.
Yes, so anybody can get in touch with me by going to my website, which is, again, is wealthymindinvestments.com. You can also contact me via email, which is alex@wealthymindinvestments.com. We have a variety of resources available, including some of the podcast interviews, many blog articles. We also have a special report for busy professionals comparing stock investment portfolio to real estate and why we for real estate and why we think that you should consider that as part of your syndication model group investing with us as well. And you can always call me directly if I'm not available. I'll schedule the call with you. My number is 415-608-2115. Happy to help anybody that I could.
Alex, my last question that I ask all of my guests is, when you come to the end of this journey of life, what do you want your epitaph to read?
That's a good one. Is it a short sentence, or is it? Or it could be anything, I guess.
It can be whatever you want. This is your epitaph.
I guess what I want people to think of me, or how I want to live my life, is I live a happy, fulfilled life on my own terms.
Great epitaph. It's been a pleasure, Alex, being with you. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Thank you for tuning in to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital works with both new and established investors nationwide, creating opportunities to flourish in all areas of life. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures great and small flourish abundantly. For resources to enhance your well-being through multifamily real estate investment, connect with us online at capital.steedtalker.com.